Yo, what's going on, you sexy ass motherfuckers? It's me. I'm back, and yeah, today we're gonna do part one to what if Deku had the Rinnegan. Alright, but I promise you this, bro. I promise you this. This is gonna be different. Alright, I 100% believe that. But yeah, let me get a couple of things out the way. People who join the Discord, because this is the 1K special. Um, some of you did not vote. I don't know if you just didn't know how to do it or if you just didn't give a fuck. But yeah, and I have a couple of things to choose Izumi's quirk, but make sure she's not a challenge for Deku, like at all. Um, should choose Deku's adoptive parents' names. Alright, the last name is gonna be Uzumaki because I want him to be Nagato Uzumaki, but he's not gonna be Nagato, right? But yeah, because that's the only name I could fucking come up with, and it is the Rinnegan, so I mean, I just associate him with fucking Nagato. But Uh, fuck. This what if is gonna contain a lot of shit. A lot of shit. It's gonna contain drugs, murder, um, fuck, suicide, or not suicidal thoughts and suicide attempt. Yeah. Also, if you need help with that shit, I'm here. A lot of other people are here. Just reach out to someone, please. But yeah, abuse, torture, and I think that's it. But there might be a lot of more, a lot of other things in there. God dang, I cannot fucking speak. Oh shit. But yeah, and yeah. Let me get one question out the way though, because I've been thinking about this for a while. If you had to have an exotic pet, if you don't know what an exotic pet is, it's basically a pet that's not a domesticated animal, like a cat or dog. I wonder what kind of pets, what kind of exotic pet you guys would have, right? I'd rather have a wolf because I fuck with wolves. Like wolves, they my shit, bro. They my shit. But yeah, enough of that. Let's get into part one to what if Deku had the Rinnegan. Now, we start off at 3.5. Deku, because I have seen research and articles on this. Kids can remember, like babies can remember things from like the age of 1 to 3. So yeah, but those memories will be lost through time of them growing. But you can still retain some of them. So I'm gonna say Deku's gonna be able to remember everything from 3.5 years up. So he remembers, his parents showering him with love, and his sister too. Like they were tight knit. Izuku was the big brother, Izumi was the little sister, right? And you know how the mentality works. The big brother always has to protect the little sister. So he'd always say, "When I get my quirk, like I'm gonna protect Izumi and this and that." And Toshinori, yup, he's All Might's son, and not stepson. He's a full-blooded son. So Toshinori's like, yeah, yeah, keep thinking like that, Izuku. And Inko, she's happy too. But that's about to come crashing down in another 6 months. So that happens, right? And for 6 months, right? He keeps remembering all these fun and happy memories he had with his family. But once they turn 4, they go to the court doctor. Sorry about that. And they start to get examined for a quirk, right? They're happy as fuck. They could not wait. But after the results come in, the doctor says, while he sits down, "Ma'am, I have good news and bad news." Toshinori isn't there because he's being All Might, although he still has the injury and shit, but yeah, he's just not there yet. And Inko says, um, can I hear the good news first? And the doctor's like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, the good news first. And she says, well, you see, your daughter here has a very powerful quirk. and this is the quirk you guys are gonna choose and shit, and I'll pick from it. And he says, well, your daughter has a very powerful quirk. Your son, on the other hand, he doesn't show any signs of one. I'm sorry to tell you this, but we've deemed him quirkless. And when Inko hears this, she switches up, right, on Izuku, and she looks at him, and she just has a face kind of full of anger, disgust, annoyance, like many different things. Izumi, though, she, on the other hand, she tries to help Izuku, like, cope with it, but yeah. Um, so that happens, and the doctor, steps out. He's like, oh, okay, like, I'll excuse myself. You can have your time here, and then you can leave. Bye. And, Inko says, goodbye, doctor. But the doctor, on the other hand, he wasn't done yet. You see, because during the test, something else showed up. Something on Izuku, it was different, It wasn't a quirk or anything, because it didn't show up as one. But something dormant within inside of him was just there. He didn't know what it was yet, but he had to contact someone, right? And his name was All For One. And All For One, connects to the line, and he speaks like, what is it, doctor? I don't have time for this. I need to start grooming Shigaraki to be the next, me, basically. And, the doctor's like, well, I'm sorry to interrupt you on that, master, but I found something extremely, extremely interesting. You see, I have a kid here. I had a kid here. And he didn't have a quirk, but, and when All For One hears but, he's like, oh, what do you, what do you mean he didn't have a quirk, but? Doctor says that's what I was about to get to. But he has something else, something greater, right? I don't know what it is. I don't know what to explain it, but it seems like it's dormant within him. It just needs the right trigger. He could be very useful. And from what I've seen, it's very, very strong. Something akin to maybe even a god. This power, it probably has the power to rule the world. As when All For One hears this, he, on the other side, has a smile. And he says, okay then, give him a couple of years. But until then, just keep tabs on him, okay? And Doctor's like, will do, master. Goodbye. As All For One says, goodbye to you too, Doctor. The line cuts off. We cut back to Izuku. And yeah, to him, everything's black and white now. Like, literally. And Inko, she puts Izumi in the car with, like, the most, I guess you could say, gentleness, I guess, if that's a word. Like, she puts Izumi in the car like she's a princess or some shit. But when she puts Izuku in the car, yeah, nah, she treats him like pure garbage when she puts him in the car. And Deku notices this, and all I gotta say is, like, Deku, he ain't normal. Like, he's smart. Like, he's intelligent as fuck. And in this world, rather than it being 80 to 20, I think, from in canon, it's 90 to 10. And each and every year, that number gets smaller and smaller and smaller. The disparity between quirkless and quirks, it's starting to become wider and wider. Now, after a while, when they get home, Inko starts treating Deku like pure shit. Izumi, she tries to help his brother, but then after a while, right, he just lets it be. She's getting the most, like, treatment from her mother. Like, she just lets that shit cloud her brain. Toshinori gets home and he's like, honey, I'm home. Like, are the kids back? And she's like, yeah, yeah, we're in the living room, right? So he goes into the living room and he's like, okay, so what happened? What are the quirks? And she says, well, what's Izumi's quirk? Deku, not Deku. Izuku, he doesn't have one. Izumi, on the other hand, has a very powerful quirk, and she explains it. Toshino's like, wow. But in this world, All Might slash Toshinori, he let all the glory, all the fame, all the power get to his head, and it's clouded his mind as well. Gran Torino is in the picture, but not as much. Like, he can't be there for Izuku all the time. So what ends up happening is Toshinori looks at Izuku with the same look his mother gave him. Disgust, anger, pity, just everything that Izuku dreads because he saw his father as his idol. Yeah, All Might was there, but he didn't really give a fuck about All Might. He saw his dad as his own hero. But now, that came crashing down. Because as soon as it came, it flew right back into the wind. And from then on, they go to school the next day. And no, they don't go to the same school as Bakugo because Toshinori has to have bread, alright? No way he doesn't have guap. So, they probably live in a decent sized home and shit. And that happens. Izumi, she says it on purpose, actually. She starts getting the perspective of her parents, right? Like, why should I treat him, like, regularly? Like, he's quirkless. It doesn't matter. Like, to her, quirks are everything now, right? She switched up so fast on her brother. And, yeah. From that day forward, he starts getting bullied. But he does have one friend. Daisuke. Daisuke Takahashi, I think that's what I named him. Hopefully I didn't butcher that name. But, yeah. And he notices Izuku and he becomes friends with him. So after a couple of months of school, they're pretty much best friends, inseparable, right? You know, although the bullying is not as bad as it's gonna get, to a 4-year-old, it's shitty. Although his parents haven't started what's gonna happen in the future, it's about to start. Now we're gonna time skip to the age of 6. From then on, from the age of 4 to before he turns 6, it's basically the same thing. But when he turns 6, he starts, what could I say, getting treated differently. He starts getting hit, punched, hit over with glass bottles. He starts getting abused. Toshinori and Inko, they become kind of alcoholics, right? But when they get to Izumi, though, they sober up real quick, right? And they treat her with like the utmost respect and everything, right? They're so benevolent to her, so nice, so everything, right? They show her all the love, all the kindness. But to Izuku, it's like they're treating him like useful trash, or you could even say they're treating him like a slave, because what they're making him do is they make him do, you know, normal shit that they could do themselves, like go getting the groceries by himself, washing everything, cleaning the house, things that Inko should be doing mostly. Yeah, she should get help from Izumi and, Deku, but, that's mostly her job as a mother, right? And, Toshinori's, the breadwinner and shit like that. But when they're home, it's like they're just lazy as fuck. They don't do anything, right? And Izumi's content with that, but when Izumi, sees her brother, she just looks at him like the same look his parents gave him. And that's how it's been. and he keeps getting abused. And at school, the bullying gets way worse. Like, he starts getting hit too there. Now, the teachers, they don't help him with shit. Fuck should they care, right? He's quirkless. And it's sad. The parents of the other students and shit, they see what's happening to Izuku and they try to help him. But once they find out he's quirkless, it's like they lose all sense of justice for him, right? They don't give a fuck anymore either. And so that happens. And now we're gonna cut towards the age of 7. Now, from the age of 7 through 9, to before he turns 9 years old, he starts selling drugs. And he starts using them too. He meets a group, they're decent people. Way better than his own family. His own family. And, they become kind of like his big brothers, you could say, right? And, he has a big sister in there too. And they don't use their own product, right? And the type of drugs they sell, they sell like, off the market shit like marijuana, LSD, painkillers, antidepressants, you could say meth, maybe. I don't fucking know. I don't know how meth works. But yeah, they sell a lot of shit. And they're decently fucking rich. Now, the money that Deku gets, he uses it for clothes, for food, his own water. Uh, but some of the money, if not a lot of the money he gets, he puts it right back in. And he buys himself drugs. And throughout that time, he starts gaining depression. And throughout those two years, he has attempted suicide about 3 times. He tried hanging himself, drowning himself, and shit, even almost like suffocating himself, basically, too. But each and every time, Inko or Toshinori would come in at the nick of fucking time, every single time, and they would save him. Now, Izuku, for the first, you know, time, he was like, oh, I must have gotten lucky then, like I couldn't finish it. But when the second time happened, he was like, oh, okay, then, no way, just let me finish this, please. A third time, and the same thing happens, and he just knows now, like, they aren't just coming in at the nick of time anymore. No. Since the beginning, they've been watching me suffer. Like it pleasures them. They're sadistic. What kind of family do I have? Why can't I just end it all? Why can't I just close the curtains on this miserable life? Why did I have to be dealt such a bad hand? Why can't I just leave? And now the reason he just doesn't tell the cops or any of that, from the outside, they seem like the most perfect family, right? They seem like, the ideal family. Yeah, they have their arguments here and there, but that would happen. And also because Izuku, he's longing for human touch, human affection. He's longing for all of that. And, what really happens is that he doesn't want to, tell on his own family. He still views them as family. Even if they do that horrible shit to him. And that's what happens. Him and Daisuke, yeah, he kind of sometimes genuinely actually smiles towards him, but most of the time, it's just a mask. A mask of fake emotions that he puts on to make his friend not worry. Now, this happens. We cut back towards the doctor, and he sees everything, and he smiles. so evilly, even though that's not a word, but he smiles like he's got a master plan, right? You know, he's gonna lure him in, and if he can't do that, he'll just take him away, kidnap his ass, right? So he goes with the latter. And so when he turns 9, Izuku, you know, every birthday he's had, he's always been locked in his room, made to be in his room. So that's what he does. But this time he said, nah, fuck it. I'm gonna go out for a walk. I'm gonna go to Daisuke's house. I'm gonna see if he wants to, you know, hang out. You know, at least see if I can enjoy this birthday. Even though it's another miserable year of life, right? And he goes to Daisuke's house. You know, they walk around for an hour, and Toshinori, Inko, and Izumi, they haven't noticed that he's gone. And when that happens, they, after an hour of walking around, they get cornered by a group of people. And, you know, someone steps up. A person who doesn't even look older than 16. He has blue hair, cracked skin, you know, ashy skin, shit like that. He's very pale. And, you know, he says, so, this is the one that Master wanted. I guess, but he doesn't seem useful. What can even, what can we even use him for? It says he doesn't even have a quirk. I guess. Also, his friend has a light-based quirk. We could use that though. But Master said kill all and every witness. Ah, what a shame. We could have really used an extra pair of hands. Anyways, who cares? Kill the boy, but save him. As you know, the other men, they do that. They grab Deku, but they make him look. They make him look as they kill his friend, as his friend tries to pathetically defend himself. He's a 9-year-old child. What can he do against grown men? It's all a failed attempt. Deku watches as his best friend just gets murdered right in front of him. And at this time, he doesn't react. It's weird. Instead, he bottles it up, puts it down, deep, deep down inside his mind. Because really, all he's ever known is pain. All this suffering he's had to go through, all because he was quirkless. But what do these people want with him? Even the boy said it, he's quirkless. What could we use him for? And he gets knocked out, put in a car, and he's driven to a facility. A decent ways away from civilization. It's still near, I think it's Mustafa or whatever, the city that they live in. And when he wakes up, he gets taken out of the car and he sees a facility there, you know, abandoned warehouse, shit like that. And he sees a couple of people, and you know they look crazy, and they are. And so when he gets sent into the facility, he gets chained up, and he asks, "What are you doing? What are you doing to me?" As one of the guys say, "Well, Master told us that we are going to run experiments on you. See if we can make you activate whatever power you have. But he said we can also have our fun." As when Deku hears fun, he knows he's fucked. He says, "What do you mean by fun?" And, you know, the guy says, "Well, he says as long as we don't kill you, we can do whatever we want to you. Torture you as much as we want." I mean, why shouldn't we? You're right here. As Deku, he is scared. Genuinely scared for the first time in a long ass time. He's genuinely scared. He's frightened. He looks at the man and he sees this crazed look in his eyes, in his face. And this is the start of 5 long fucking years of torture, experimentation, and shit that no one should ever go through, especially a child. Now, for the first 4 years, he is experimented on, but after that, All for One comes. He tries to activate whatever he has, but even his quirk can't let him do that. And so he just says, oh, damn it. Like, we wasted so much time on him, like, what a waste. You can do whatever you want with him. I don't care anymore. All this time and effort wasted on a pathetic failure. And Deku's like, what do you mean? What did you want to do with me? I never got answered with that. As All for One says, you have something great in you. Although I do not know how to activate it, it's such a pity. I could have really used your power or whatever you had. It would have been great. But I'll just leave you here. I'll let them do whatever they want to do to you. Goodbye. All for One leaves, and ooh, for that next year, it's a bad year. You see, because he gets used like I guess you could say a mural, right? He's used as a human art piece. He's branded with different things. He's branded with a dragon, a Oni mask, an X, shit like that. Like, if you don't know what branding is, it's basically when you get a metal rod and you put something on the end of it, like a design or a label or some shit, and it's really fucking hot at the end, and you just put it on someone's skin and it creates a scar. And they do have healers, so they can heal most of it up, but there still are a lot of scars on his body, and some of the branding things do stay there. Like, they do the worst to him. And each and every night, like, he doesn't cry. He just sits there hurt, writhing in pain every night. But each and every time he just tries to show anything, he can't. Like, it's just locked deep within himself. And yeah. Now, on the day he turned 14, a couple of days after that, something happens with Izuku. For a couple of days, he's finally been able to show something. Like, he's been able to cry for a little. And on the third day of him being 14, something snaps inside of him. And his eyes start bleeding and morphing and changing into something new. His body changes along with it. His green hair is now black. His green eyes are now black. He gains about 4 to 5 inches. He's now about around 5'10". He looks completely different than from what he originally did. And when the guards there, the people who would guard his cell, see him, they are wondering what's happening with him. Is he okay? And then Izuku blacks out, but throughout this time, he unconsciously used, or subconsciously used, an ability of the Rinnegan. He used, I think it was a Diva Path. And he says, almighty push. And he destroys the entire facility and everyone along with it, dead. 83 people. He murdered 83 people that day. And when he wakes up, he sees the amount of bodies under rubble, some with no head, no arms, no legs. And he vomits. And he says, I have no time to worry about this. Since he is still hurt, he starts trying to find a way. He follows a road, but sadly, no cars are out there at the time. After a day or two, he finally reaches civilization. He comes back to the place he used to call home, Mustafa City or whatever. And when people see him, they start instantly worrying, like, we gotta send this kid to the hospital, like, we gotta help him. Like, they run up to him and, like, tell him, is he okay? Like, is he alright? Like, is he hurt anywhere? And he's like, I need help. Help me. And he passes out. And the people, they, like, start worrying. They're like, oh, shit, like, we gotta send him to the fucking doctor. That's what they do. He gets rushed to the hospital. They help him. And after, like, a day or two, he is awoken. He wakes up. And as soon as Izuku wakes up, he screams out, stop! And he's panting hella hard. Little did he know there was a nurse in the room, and when she heard him yell, stop, like, she freaked the fuck out. She was like, she dropped all the shit she had in her hand. She's like, oh my god! Oh, you're awake! Holy fuck! Like, she's like, I gotta go talk to doctors, like, and he was like, wait, hold on. Where am I? How long have I been here? I don't know right now. I just woke up. He's like hella confused, right? And she's like, well, you're in Mustafa City. I don't know how you pronounce it. And you've been out for about a day and a half. Now I gotta go call the doctors and make them do checkups on you. Make sure your body is perfectly fine. And he's like, alright. He just woke up from a badass nightmare. He remembers his family, his mother and father especially, abusing him. So that happens. And, the nurse leaves. She comes back a few minutes later, and Izuku's just there, sitting on the, bed, looking outside the window. Contemplating, right? He's just looking out in the sky, wondering what's next for me, right? I've been out for 5 years. Haven't touched civilization. Am I even going to be able to integrate back into society? Well, who the fuck knows? And the doctors come in and they say, well, hello there. What's your name? We couldn't find you on any database or anything like that, so do you have a name? And he's like, I do, but I hate it. I don't want to use that name. And if you ask me about my family, I have one, but I hate them too. I don't want to associate with them ever again. I'll just go under a new name now. Is that alright with you? And the doctor, he's like, damn, like, he straight up said, I hate my name, I even hate my family. And he's like, oh, if you really want to, like, yeah, you can change your name. Can I ask why? And he was like, well, long story short, I was quirkless, family abused me, abused at school, or no, bullied at school, No one wanted to help me. Best friend died in front of my eyes, and that's it. That's all I want to tell you. I can tell you more, but I don't feel like telling you right now. Right? And so that's what happens. And, you know, the doctor's, he's very understanding. Like, oh, he's like, oh, fuck. Yeah, I shouldn't have asked, like, damn, it's kind of harsh, right? Like, abused, watch his best friend die in front of his eyes. He was bullied at school, and he was quirkless. Like, bro, those are the worst things. And in the between those 5 years that he was gone, the quirk and quirkless people have no, that percentage has gone up, right? So now it's like 93 to 8. That's a lot because that's including the entire world population, right? So 93% of the world population has quirks and 7% don't. That's kind of fucked. Yeah, that's kind of sad. And I think I got my math wrong earlier, but shh. We ain't gotta talk about that. We ain't gotta talk about that. But that happens, and the doctor says, well, once you're fine, uh, the police want to have a word with you, and he's like, okay, I want to know what they want to have a word about with me, but I don't know what they want to talk about with me. But okay, a couple hours go by, he's like, all right, then I'm good. Like he's able to walk, right? And you might be like, well, no, he has to go to fuck. Don't tell me I forgot how to pronounce that fucking word. Rehabilitation. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Rehabilitation, right? But I'm gonna say in the cell, he was able to dangle his feet and shit. And, he was able to touch the ground, so he was able to use his legs and shit. Run in place, especially when the guards weren't there. So his legs were still useful. He was able to move and shit. He was a little malnourished, but nothing that a couple of days of good eating could fix. And so he goes to the police department, and he gets brought in for questioning. Like, they ask him, like, what's your family, where are they, what's their names, like, what's your name, what happened to you, why do you have so many scars on your body, like so many, the usual questions that you would get asked if you were a fucking 14-year-old child with many body scars, literally getting knocked out for a day and a half. Like, fuck. It was like, I don't want to talk about my family. I despise them. I despise my name. These scars, you don't have to worry about them. Although some of them I got from my own family. But that's it. That's all I want to tell you, basically. And he was like, doctors, or not the doctors, the cops are just like, damn. Oh shit. Like, they're like, how could he be so straightforward with that shit, bro? What? They're confused as fuck. And Izuku says, like, can I just be put in a foster home or some shit? Like, I don't want to go back to my family. Like, I really don't. And they're like, alright then. I mean, we could try to put you in a foster home, but, chances are you're not going to get adopted. But if you still want to run that risk, you're able to. Like, I'm going to say they don't force him to go back to his family because he literally just said what happened to him. He was abused and shit like that. So they ask him a couple more questions like, where have you been all this time? Like, why were you literally knocked out for a day and a half? And it was like, so I don't want to get into the details, but I was gone for 5 years and I finally escaped. I don't know what I have. And, he's looked at his eyes in the hospital, right? So he knows, he sees like the purple eyes and shit. And, he can notice the fear in the cops and the doctors and the nurses' eyes when they looked at him, right? And they were like, these eyes, I activated them before I blacked out and woke up. And I followed a road and I somehow got back here. I don't know how long I was out there, a day or two, maybe. But yeah, I think this is my quirk. But he knows it's not his quirk. He knows it's the power that All For One was talking about. You know, the power greater than any quirk, shit like that. You know, the doctors are like, okay. You know, like they're having a hard time believing like he just activated his quirk. He's 14. He's like, yeah, dude, like remember your date of birth? And he was like, yeah, like I think it was like July 25th. I think that's what his birthday was. I don't know what year My Hero Academia is placed in. I think it's like 200 or 300 years in the future. But yeah, he just says, you know, July 25th or some shit. Hopefully I'm close to that. His birthday. It's either in July or June. But yeah. And you know, they're like, okay, so you're like not even older than, you know, you're just 14. And he's like, yeah, I am. And you know, they do all that shit. You know, they put him into foster care, and you know, after a week or two, right? You know, a couple comes in, and their last names are Uzumaki because I cannot come up with any other fucking name. So I'm just gonna use Uzumaki, and his new name is gonna be Nagato because I can't come up with names because I'm not fucking original. Hey, but yeah, you know, a couple comes in and you know they look around, you know, seeing like you know what kid they want to adopt. I'm making this sound like it's a bro, I'm making this sound so wrong. But you know they look for someone to adopt, right? And they see Zuku, and you know they ask questions about him. They're foster care people. They're like, yeah, his name's Nagato, no last name. We don't know his family. All we know is that he was abused. Uh, he got here 2 weeks ago. He was put in the hospital after a couple of people found him, rushed him here. He was gone for a day and a half. We don't really know much about him. He just appeared here, so we just had to take him in. He didn't want to go back to his family, and we can, you know, tell why. And they're like, how old is he? And he's like, oh, well, he's only 14. And they're like, oh, 14. Huh. And they're like, yeah, we don't want to deal with little kids. Like, he seems like a reasonable age, you know? Like, why don't we adopt him? And, you know, the wife of the male, you know, she says, well, yeah, we need the necessary paperwork to do that, honey. And, you know, the guy says, you're right. Fuck, I don't know how long the adoption process takes, but I'm gonna say it gives him like a whole solid like half a month, right? So like 3.5 to like 3 weeks or some shit. Because each month, no, like 2.5 weeks. Yeah, 2.5 weeks. So that happens, and yeah, after 2.5 weeks, he gets adopted by the Uzumakis. And I want you to decide their names because I can't come up with names right now, and I can't be bothered to. But yes, and you know they're a decently off family, right? You know they got enough money to support a couple of kids, and yeah, they're rich. You could say, yeah, they are rich. But Izuku don't really give a fuck. He's just like after a week or two, he gets fully integrated into the household, and they lay down some ground rules, of course, this and that. But they're trying to give him a good life because once they saw him like shirtless, because he didn't really give a fuck sometimes, but they saw the amount of scars and the branding symbols that he had on his back. I think I said this earlier, but he had a dragon on his lower left back, and then he had an Oni mask on his top right shoulder. And he had he had dozens of fucking scars on his body, but he could cover them up with clothes pretty easily. And so they're trying to give him a good life, right? Trying to bring him out of that hole because they see that he does not smile, he does not laugh, he does not show shit. Like after he mentally broke when he activated his Rinnegan, like he's not showing shit. He's just like a very monotone face. It's no expression, expressionless. and he's very stoic. He's very, I guess you could say, apathetic. He doesn't care about what happens around him. He doesn't care what happens to him. Like he's just like, all right, whatever happens to me, life is life. But I'm gonna say something later on when he meets a certain someone. Now, after I guess you could say, 3 weeks, yeah. After 3 weeks, they let him go out, right? They give him money, they're like, how about you go out, enjoy alone time? And he's like, okay, where should I go? And they're like, how about you go to a cafe or a restaurant, to the mall, buy something for yourself, just enjoy yourself. And he's like, all right then, he's so bleak, you could say, with his words, and he just says, all right, goodbye. And they say goodbye, and they're trying to liven up the mood, but Izuku is just, he's not letting that shit happen. He got that shit on lockdown. And he walks out, and he's walking for a couple of minutes, like 30, 45, right? And he's just chilling. And they've given them the essential, like they gave him a phone, just in case he needs to call them and shit. They give him obviously fucking clothes, shit like that. And he asked him to get contacts because he didn't like the way his eyes looked, so he just got black contacts. And or no, I'm gonna say he's gonna be able to deactivate his Rinnegan. All right, so he just has black eyes, but when he really wants to, normally it would be in his Rinnegan state, but if he really wants to, he can just deactivate them. But he has to be conscious when he's deactivating it. So like when he's asleep, and if you open his eyes, it's a Rinnegan. So yeah, so you could basically say it's like a Genjutsu or some shit. But yeah, so that happens. And so he's walking around, and he turns a corner, right? And he accidentally bumps into someone, right? And the girl, yeah, no, but we're not doing that shit. But the girl falls down, and he says like, oh, like, I'm sorry, I wasn't looking where I was going. And she says, no, 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 it's fine. I wasn't looking where I was heading either. Um, she drops a couple of things, right? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, oh, here, let me help you with that. He helps her. And they do that shit, and they're like, well, I'm sorry, like I wasn't looking where I was heading. And Deku's like, nah, like it's fine. Um, how about I buy you a cup of coffee or some shit as sorry? And she's like, oh, um, okay. He's like, all right then. I guess we're going to a cafe. And she kind of laughs. She's like, and Izuku's like, what's so funny? And she's like, well, you sound so emotionless. Like, why are you so monotone? Liven up a bit. And he's like, oh, yeah. Like, he did not give a fuck. He's just there. And she's like, oh, yay. It's awkward, right? And he's like, so, what's your name? He asked. And she's like, oh, my name? It's Setsuna Tokage. Yes, sir. If you saw my last video, you would have seen her. Alright, you would have seen her. But she's like, what's your name? And he says, my name? Well, my new name is Nagito Uzumaki. My old one, I don't want to speak on that shit. And when he says his old one, he kind of laced it with a little bit of hate, And she noticed it. She's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring something up. And he was like, nah, it's okay. Um, the past is a past, they say. But I don't ever know if I'm going to be able to forget my past. But, you know, as time goes on, I guess all wounds can heal, even the deepest ones. And he's found some philosophical shit. I cannot talk. And she's like, oh, yeah, a lot of people do say that, time heals all wounds, they say. And he says, hopefully. They just walk in. Yeah, now it's just awkward silence, right? And so, they get into a cafe, they order their coffee and, whatever, bread and shit. I don't fucking know. I don't go to a cafe. But, they do that, they sit down, they talk a little, like, what's your hobbies, like, Deku asks her, like, so, like, what's your dream in life? She's like, well, I want to be a hero. Like, I want to save people, see happy smiles, right? But if someone ever needs my help, like, in an emotional or physical situation, like, I'll always be there, as a hero or as a person if they want. And he's like, I like that dream. It's very great of you, you know? And she's like, oh, well, thank you, What's your dream? And he's like, I don't know. I don't really have a whole dream planned out. I mean, when I was younger, I wanted it to be a hero, but now I don't know. Because now that he's gotten older, he has gotten a little smarter, right? So he was able to piece together, he did have a couple of Armot figures, in his rooms. But once he got older, he was finally able to figure out that his father, his own fucking father, was All Might himself. And he figured that out when he was getting, like, tortured, right? So when he figured that out, he bottled that shit up too. So, sheesh, you can imagine what the fuck that did to him too. Like, one of his idols, one of his favorite heroes, turned out to be his father, the one who was abusing him and being an alcoholic person near him. Like, that's like unhealthy as shit. And she's like, so why don't you want to be a hero? It sounds like you don't want to be it anymore. He's like, well, um, I found something out, my father, he was a hero, but how do I say this? He abused me, right? He was an alcoholic, but back then I was quirkless. My sister, though, she had an amazing quirk. So they treated her like a princess and treated me like subhuman. They treated me like a slave, you could say. I didn't have the best life. Still to this day, I don't know if I can ever really show anything anymore. Show any compassion, any sympathy, any love, any happiness, any laughter. I don't know. I had to see my best friend die in front of me. I have many, many scars all over my body, all because I had something I didn't know I had. And she was like, um, wow, that's a lot to take in. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put that all on you. And she's like, no, 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 it's fine, it's fine. Like, if you need someone to talk to, like, I'm here. And she's like, well, what do you mean something you didn't know you had? He was like, well, um, I'm, I need someone to talk to right now. So, when I was younger, I was diagnosed as quirkless. But, the doctor who tested me, he kept something from me and my family. And when he said family, he did lace it with, venom, with hate, with anger, rage. And he said he kept power from me. It's not a quirk. It's something far greater. I don't even know what it can do to its fullest extent at the moment, but once I find out, hopefully I can change the world with it. And she's like, can I see it? And he's like, are you sure? Like, I've shown a lot of people it, and they seem to be scared of it. The only people who don't seem to be scared of it are my adoptive parents. And she's like, no, 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 I promise I won't get scared. She's like, and Izuku's like, okay then, and he, like, reverts his eyes back into his Rinnegan. And she just looks at it, right? Just mesmerized, she's not fearful of it, anything like that. She just looks at it like so captivating. Something about it just draws her to it. And he's like, are you okay there? And she just noticed that she was getting closer and fucking closer to Izuku's face, to Deku's face, right? And She was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry about that." It was just like your eyes. Like, how could anyone be scared of those? They're so pretty, so captivating. And he says, "Well, thank you." Um, he looks at his watch, or he looks at his phone, and he checks the time. And he's like, "Well, I got to get going. Um, it was nice having a talk with someone, at least. Um, sorry for bumping into you again, and hopefully you enjoyed this little talk that we had." He says, "Wait, hold on. Before you leave, how about we exchange contact information?" And he's like, "So you want to get my number?" And she's like, no, like contact information. You know, she's trying not to make it sound like she's trying to get his number and shit like that. And he's like, all right then. You know, they give each other's phones, put each other's shit in there, you know, this and that. And, you know, Deku says, all right then, goodbye. I'll see you later, I guess. And she's like, yeah, you will. I'll text you later. Hopefully you have a good day. And he's like, yeah, you too. And, you know, they go their separate ways. Izuku goes back home, you know. He's, I guess you could say, happy. I don't want to say happy because it, he was just allowed to vent to someone, right? You know, he could just put all his feelings on the table, you know, talk to someone a little, you know. And, you know, he heads home, you know, he opens the door, you know, his new mom and dad, real mom and dad, all right, you know, like, not by like blood, but like an actual real parent to him, right? Not like abusive ones. And so, you know, they say greet him and shit. They're like, "Hello there, you know, Nagato. How was your day? You know, did you make any new friends?" He was like, yeah, I actually did." And they're like, and you know, the fucking I need names for them, dude. But I'm gonna just call her Mrs. Uzumaki. You know, she like gasps me. She's like, "Oh, look at my baby, you know, growing up so fast, right?" And Deku's just like, don't you think that's a little too quick?" And you know, Mr. Uzumaki, he's like, "Yeah, honey, like you got to let him, you know, feel the place out for a little, you know, before calling him your baby." And she's like, "Well, I mean, we can't have our own children, so like, you know, like we gotta enjoy this time while it lasts." And you know, Izuku, inside his mind, he doesn't know this, but you know, the chains on his emotions, they loosen up a little bit, right? And you know, on the outside, Deku's like, "Oh, okay, then, um, I'll go to my room." As you know, she says, "Okay, honey, like we'll call you when food's ready and shit like that." And you know, he's like, "Okay, then, goodbye. You know, I'll be down when food's ready." And you know, he goes upstairs. You know, he just chills in his bed. He just looks at his ceiling like I'm doing right now. Hey, because I come off this shit with the top of my head, off the top of my head, and yeah, he just looks at his ceiling, just contemplating everything that's happened. And he does have books, right? So like he's not dumb, all right? He's not dumb. So he knows like basic, you know, he knows addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, exponents, fucking variables. Fucking variables, dude. I fucking hate variables. He knows how to graph shit. He knows AC plus B, no, A squared plus B squared equals C squared, and all that bullshit. And yeah, so he's, you know, actually smarter than what he should actually be because he's been out of society for 5 years. But you know, like I said earlier, he wasn't normal. He was always smarter than everyone around him. And so, you know, he goes down dinner. You know, they have a good day. Like that dinner was pretty good. You know, for Izuku too. You know, like he didn't notice it, but you know, when he was eating, like a little tear formed in his eye and it fell down. But it was only one, right? But you know, his new parents, they were able to catch this and they were like, "Oh my gosh," in their head, right? They're like, "Yes!" They're like freaking out, right? They're like he cried. Why is he crying? Like they're like freaking out now. They're like, "Oh shit, what did we do wrong? What did we do wrong?" Like they're like freaking out. And they just keep eating, right? And Deku notices that they're eating a little faster, but he pays nothing attention. He has talks about like, how was your day? They were like, it's okay, it was pretty good. It was like, how was yours? And like, who was that friend that you met? And he was like, well, I met this girl. And his new mom is just like, oh my gosh, you met a new girl, like shit like that. You know how moms be, right? And like this relationship that they're having, it's moving on so quick. Even for Izuku, this shit's moving on fast as fuck. Like, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, like, is this your new girlfriend or something? Like, you gotta tell us about this shit, like." And Izuku's like, "No, um, I just talked to her for a little while. I accidentally bumped into her. I took her out for coffee and we talked for a little. And yeah, I gave her my number. She gave me hers, and yeah, I mean, I guess we're gonna talk tomorrow or something." She's like, "Oh my gosh, this is like the romance movies where like the romantic couple bump into each other or like do this and that by accident, and they fall in love." And Izuku just looks at her a little dumbfounded. He's like, okay. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, like when's the wedding gonna be?" Like Izuku's, and then his dad just says, "Yo, whoa, 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 whoa. You're moving on a little too fast here, Slim. All right, you're moving on a little too fast here, honey. All right, these are just friends, okay? Friends." He doesn't even know the girl that much yet, but she's like, "Oh, well, we gotta get ready at least, have the shit prepared, on deck." And they're having their fun laughter, and Izuku, he's just there, and the lock on his emotions in his mind again, it loosens up, and that's what happens. Um, And the day goes, they finish dinner up, he goes upstairs, and he has his phone out, Setsuna text him, and she says, "Hey," and Izuku's like, "Hello there." Like, he's kind of awkward with it, right? And she's like, "Wow, you're kind of awkward even through text, aren't you?" And he's like, "I guess, I mean, I didn't really tell you everything, but, I haven't really talked to any other people for like 5 years." And she's like, "Wait, what? 5 years? What do you mean by that?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'll explain it later." And she's like, "Well, okay then. Like, how was the rest of your day?" And he was like, "Okay, it was decent. Had a good time with my family, my new family." She's like, "Well, that's great. Hopefully you guys are getting along." He's like, "Yeah, we are." And he was like, "How about yours?" And she was like, "My day was great. Like, after we met into each other, I came home, like my family was all happy, this and that. I went to the mall, met up with some friends, bought some clothes, shit like that." And he's like, "Wow, that seemed like a pretty nice day." She's like, "Yeah, maybe next time you should come with us." And he was like, I don't know about that, but like maybe next time I'll try. Who knows?" And she was like, "Well, I gotta go to sleep, because it is like 11 to like 12 in the morning." So that's what she does, and they say goodnight, and they end it off. And that's where I'm gonna end off part one, part uno, all right, of What If Deku Had the Rinnegan. Hopefully you enjoyed this part. Next part should be coming out after this one, so it should be my next video. It'll be the 10th month training period, and then it should be the entrance exams, and then I might have the first day of UA in there. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this part, and hopefully you stick around for the UA Sports Festival. Now, the reason I want you to stick around to then is because I'll give you a decision for the people who stayed at the end, right? Do you want Izuku to form the Akatsuki? Yes, the Akatsuki, alright? I'm gonna bring them motherfuckers in here. Do you want him to form the Akatsuki? Or do you want him to stay a true hero, like become a true hero, and break all like his emotional shackles and shit like that, Yeah, but either way, he'll end up with his family and Setsuna, but it'll be in different directions, right? But yeah, to those all the people who stick around to the end, I'll catch y'all sexy, sexy ass motherfuckers later.